You asked, I'm answering. Welcome to our annual info extravaganza. We're going to be covering Bitcoin, what's really next for AI, how to navigate change well so you don't get smashed in the face by this crazy time. And we have a special segment you asked for. Is Trump like a young Hitler? We explore the topic with channel vet What If Alt Hist, and his answer will either thrill you or make you want to bite someone, but you're not going to be in the middle. I'm Tom Bilyeu, and this is the Tom Bilyeu Show. Drew, welcome, man. How we doing?
I'm feeling good, man. I read every community post, every note, every comment. The community is funny. So shout out to you guys. I was dying, laughing, crying, all the emotions. How are you?
I like it. I'm good, man. I'm excited for this.
Yeah,
I'm excited to move from audience thinking to community thinking. This is fun.
Yeah, it's starting to be a two-way street, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, no doubt.
Speaking of which, let's jump right into it. All right, and everybody give me grace about names. Some of you guys don't have, you've seen that episode. Nick, N-I-C-K-R, guys.
R.
Nick R, 1627. All right. So Ricky Martinez, 4951 says, I'm really interested in your interaction with AI. How are you using this technology? What have you learned from it?
So the way that I think people should conceptualize AI in general, and this certainly speaks to how I actually use it, is I am trying to speed up everything I do. I'm trying to go faster and I'm trying to drive costs down. So for sure, there's a bit of CEO in that answer, in that I'm always looking for ways to make things less expensive. In my day-to-day life, I look at it as I have a PhD level intellect standing over my shoulder that's been educated on everything that the human mind has ever put on the internet, and it is vast. And so suddenly you have this researcher that you can point at any topic instantly, and it will give you context. You can ask it to look at it from different angles so that you're not getting trapped inside of a bias. I also, like you're saying, I really think about chat as a person in my life. I try to personify them as much as I can. I like having a pseudo emotional connection to chat and really building that historical context so that it understands the way that I want answers. So for instance, I never wanted to tell me what it thinks I want to hear, which it will do because AI will echo you back. It's pretty crazy. So I wanted to challenge my ideas. I wanted to push me. I wanted to bring me different angles. And so I am using it to make me a better interviewer. So I'll go in and I'll have pre-discussions. Okay, what do you know about this guest? I'll even ask it sometimes, what would I ask it? So that it will give me like different things that I historically have asked people these types of questions. I'll ask it what chat thinks this person would say if I ask it this question to get a sense, like, are they going to go somewhere interesting? Are we going to be treading old ground? And look, none of the answers are literal, but going through the act of thinking how I would approach it. What is a theme that I can build in? What's a thread? How can I follow something to the end? Of course, just like Tyson says about boxing, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. I always have a plan that ends up getting derailed the second you ask that first question. So we have an episode coming up with Andrew Bustamante, did all this prep. You and I did all this prep, talking to chat, talking to you, and then he literally co-ops my first question and starts like asking me something, and that takes us like in a whole different direction. And so that works when you really come in prepared. And I have never found anything that can help me prepare as well as ChatGPT. So it's phenomenal. And whatever AI you want to put in that position. Okay, so that's how I use it as a person. The way I use it in the business context is that we are in the entertainment field on that side of the business. So with Project Kyzen, all the stuff that we're doing there, the comic books, everything we're doing there, and the ability to iterate rapidly on creative is unreal. Now, the vast majority of it never makes it actually into a panel. It never makes it onto the screen, but it will allow you to brainstorm ideas. So we do skins in the game. And so if we want to come up with a new skin, we're going to go into Midjourney or whatever. We're going to image prompt like crazy until we find something that either sparks an idea that we then put a human on and they follow it through. Or there are times where it's like, yo, that's really close. And we can make minor modifications to it, send it to a 3D sculptor, and they'll build it out. Now, my hope is that we very rapidly get to the point where you can just plug in your prompts and actually get it to output a 3D asset, but that's not here yet. It's going to be here. And when you see the explorations that they're doing with text to world, where you can describe a world and it will actually give you a 3D environment that you can move around with some interaction. It's still just using pattern recognition and it's guessing the next frame. And so it's not really a game yet. And I want people to understand there's a huge difference between something that's guessing the next frame and an actual game engine. But we've been able to really bring our cost down on the development cycle. Do the same thing if I'm writing a script for something. Like we have an upcoming video about how to make every aspect of your life better in 2025. I ended up using basically nothing of the script that it gave me, but it really helped me put structure to it. It allowed me to see in the rough drafts, because I would prompt, I mean, I gave it like 4 pages of prompt, and then it would kick back something that would be like, okay, oh, I see how you're organizing it. That's actually really interesting, but the things that you're saying are generic and not actually what I would say. But that back and forth allows you to shorten the amount of time that it would otherwise take. So let's say traditionally a script like that would take me 12 hours. I've been able to get that down to say 4. That's a huge savings for me. Absolutely massive. And then we use it a lot in programming as well. So again, right now, you can't just say, give me a website that looks like this, does this, but you can get a lot of the early design work done. There are things now plugged into some of the applications that we use that will output some basic code. So you still have to do some of the design, but it will give you basic code. So you can use the prompts to give you a rough draft of the design. You tweak it a little bit. You then take that, you're doing it inside, let's say, Figma, and then it's going to output code that's pretty decent. And then if you're using things like Cursor, you can really begin to push this stuff. And so you need to layer a lot of different things on to get an output, but it really is allowing a smaller team to do more. It allows an individual to extend their capabilities, because if I go from something that used to take me 12 hours down to 4, that's 8 hours now that I'm able to do more stuff. And so the output that it will give you as you begin to master your relationship with this stuff is really incredible. So it is a 2-3x multiplier on anybody's output if you're willing to take the time to learn the tools, and you don't just throw your hands up and say, well, it didn't do it for me. It doesn't work like that yet. I think we're going to get to that point, but right now it extends your capabilities. It allows you to never get stuck. So as a writer, one of the things I found was, as a solo writer, it might take me 3 or 4 times longer to write a script than if I have a writing partner, because you just never get trapped in an idea. The other person is just going to be like, what about this? Like, oh man, that made me think of this thing. And so you can have that kind of back and forth with chat. Absolutely incredible. We have a script coming out for our animated film for Mary Mods, and we have a mentor character. And I was reading the script and I'm like, it just feels like the mentor character comes in too late. Hit chat up and just like, hey, what page did Obi-Wan Kenobi first appear in Star Wars? Boom, like that, lets you know. You can ask it questions that will talk to you about film structure, that film in general. You can ask it to give you examples from, like, give me the way that Save the Cat would look at this story moment, or give me classic 3-act structure. So again, that PhD isn't like only trained in one thing. It's literally trained on all human knowledge. And so what I have found when I interface with other people here at Impact Theory is there is a lot of frustration around, it doesn't do everything. And then they'll check out for 6 months. And in that 6 months, like, this stuff is getting better and better and better. And so if I can get everybody to shift their thinking to, this is a thing that outputs something complete that I don't have to do anything around, which is part of the anxiety, by the way, and instead get them to think of this as, you used to have to chop trees down with an axe, and now you have a chainsaw. And I think that's the right way to think about AI.
That's a great analogy to put it. Very good. All right, from Kami Wolf, they have a question about AI and ethics. So, is sex robots going to destroy humanity? And how do you feel about the ethics of future tech?
Man, I'm on the fence about sex robots. They really might, like, if you think dating apps are bad, sex bots are going to be rough.
Imagine they connected the sex bots to the dating app. Like, you can,
oh my God.
Like, if robots really started swiping, that's my bad. There's
going to be something there, because if you want to engage the male brain, just create a bunch of female AI with AI created images. And if you can give them different flavors, like if you can actually make them different personalities, people will engage. Yeah. I wouldn't have believed that until OnlyFans. And then, even though everybody knows you're not actually talking to the OnlyFans girl, you're talking to a whole bunch of guys behind the scenes writing back, but it still fills a void of, like, okay, I have the image of the person and they're putting out the one-to-many content. And then I transpose that onto the actual interactions that I'm having with this person. So even though some part of me knows that that's not really them, I can transpose that onto it. So that really is going to happen. People need to be careful because bots, sex bots or otherwise, will give you a proxy of whatever that thing is. It could be a proxy spouse. And let's just say that you're in a dry spell and you're a woman who's frustrated with dealing with guys because, oh my God, they're just so taxing and they don't understand how to interact with you. And suddenly you get a chatbot that reflects back a bunch of feminine qualities. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. He really gets me, but he doesn't. He's an AI that's predicting the next letter, not even the next word. And so that's where, again, we've talked about this before. I want people to use that as like, okay, dear bot, I want you to help me be better with humans, because that I think is a really potent use. And for friend-like companionship, I think it could be great, especially for people that are lonely. So I don't want to knock anything. But I do think that as of today, it's not even close. You are way better off interacting with other human beings in terms of your own emotional well-being. So yeah, I think we need to be careful with that. If I had a sex bot at 14, dude, I never would have graduated high school for sure. Like I can't imagine without a prefrontal cortex, that would have been really crazy. One of the guests on the show, Arthur Hayes, actually owns stock in a sex bot company. So that stuff really is coming, man.
It's on the way.
Yeah,
do you apply that to all AI consciousness? So AI best friends, AI kids, AI pets, like
pets? No, yeah. I think having pet is it's interesting how I actually have weird friction about referring to my dishwasher, who I'm going to give the personality of a great figure from history, as a pet. That's interesting that I have emotional friction around that. That's where I think this is going to play out, that you will suddenly have, like, your dishwasher will know you. Your refrigerator will be your coach. Bro. You really want to eat that? Like, come on, man, order more of this. Like, it's better for you. And your fridge is going to be connected to your Oura Ring. So it's going to know you ate that and you slept like this. Like, come on, nudging you, cheering you on. And you'll be able to select the personalities. Like, do I want my fridge to be like, come on, bro, let's have beers and pizza? Or do you want it to like push you to be better?
To be like David Goggins just staring at you.
Dude, hey everybody, if you're a subscriber to me, you get the David Goggins module on your fridge. I actually love that. Oh my God.
Be hardcore, motherfucker. Put down that donut. Get out.
You are unlocking things right now. All right, everybody, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, I'll let you have my personality in your fridge. This is amazing.
Nice. All right. Amy Beard 2054 says, if AI is going to drive the cost of everything to near zero, why are the super wealthy supporting this? Which is a very good question. If the age of abundance is coming and energy is going to be zero and productivity is going to skyrocket, wouldn't that take money out of people's pockets? Why are the billionaires excited about this?
Yeah, so people will do things in the short term to maximize their short-term gain. Full stop. Even if they knew down the road it could cause problems, most people are not going to think beyond their short-term desires. But the real answer is nobody can see around the corner. And so a lot of people that are really motivated, they want to invent the future. And so even though they know some part of them is relinquishing control, it's a future that they want to live in. I think a lot about this with game design. I'm building a game that I want the community to ultimately build more of than I build of. So I'm trying to create something where I will become but one of the people creating inside of this container. And there is like some sadness to like, oh, I don't get to do the 80s thing where I tell these incredible stories that a certain percentage of the world falls in love with, like to be somebody like George Lucas, to have created something like Star Wars, or to be like J.K. Rowling and create something like Harry Potter. Oh my God, the writer in me wants that so much. But that really isn't the future. I think the future is you create containers and other people also get to express their creativity inside of that. I think that's just what people are going to want.
Shared community of creativity.
Yeah, and because the act of creation will become so much easier. You'll be able to prompt. You'll be able to spend an afternoon refining a prompt, but instead of spending 5 years of your life it's literally an afternoon. And then something as fully fleshed out will be born from that. And so, yeah, it really will be like Ready Player One, where you have an infinite smorgasbord of these experiences where I can go and be like, what was it like for Drew growing up? And you will have created that experience for me to go and check out. And so I'll dip in and be like, whoa, man, I understand you to a whole new level. And I'll bounce around doing experiences like that. I think it's incredible. I think it's better than what we have now. But we're all a product of our time. And so there is a small part of me that misses that idea. But ultimately, that's why I think these guys end up doing it, is they can't see the future clearly. So they don't know for sure that energy is going to reach zero. They'll prognosticate. They want to create that future. And if they're seeing what I'm seeing, they know the reality is, like Zuckerberg making Llama something that is open source, that it's just a faster way to iterate, to get these tools in people's hands to build that future that you want to build. And then the final button I'll put on it is, I think Elon Musk is right that the most honest look at AI includes the fact that this is a demon summoning circle. And we think we will be able to control the demon that we're summoning, or we hope that we're actually summoning an angel, but we don't know. And there's just something in the human psyche. We cannot stop ourselves. When technology is a promise of a better future, we can't help it. And so I get personally so excited about all the cool things that AI will be doing, that to some degree, you just don't look at the uglier side because you don't know that it's going to be true. And you're ultimately going to look at the thing that you find most motivational. And I'm most excited by the things that could go right.
Do you think that there's like a post-capitalism kind of lens to it? Like,
if this all works out the way that people think it's going to, we will 100% end up on the other side of capitalism. So in a world where energy costs approach zero, all the things that we know about capitalism go away. And so it becomes a question of, cool, then what does that world look like? And that's where, I mean, I want to start bringing on sci-fi authors that really are sharp at envisioning the future. There's that phenomenal quote, the job of the science fiction writer is not to imagine the car, but to imagine the traffic jam. And so bringing people on that really look into the future and go, well, what about this? And what about this? And so there's the Star Trek version of the future where things just get better and better and better. And then there are the countless Blade Runner type ones where it's like, not everything goes well. And exploring those ideas, I think, is going to be a lot of fun.
Nice. Looking forward to it. All right. Michelle P237 said, my son graduated with a computer science degree the year AI arrived. Sheesh. He hasn't been able to find work. Any advice I can give him?
Okay. So first of all, I want your son to get very, very excited, because right now, AI is just a tool. So going back to that analogy of you used to have to cut trees down with an axe, now you're going to use a chainsaw. Now, for anyone that's coming of age right now, you don't have as much baggage as older people have around like, but wait, I didn't just study for 4 years. I've been doing this for 40 years.
Ooh, yeah.
And now you're asking me at like 55, you want me to go in a whole new direction? And it's like, yes. And the way that time flows, it just does not care if it completely obliterates you and the rest of your life is a misery because you cannot get your head around adapting to something new. But if you're young, you're not going to be stuck in the same way. And so you're going to find your way to using the tools a lot faster. But what people are really going to have to accept is the world moves insanely fast. And your job is to be one of the people at the vanguard that's able to keep up with the pace of change. So learn AI. Learn AI. One of the places that AI is going to be the most advantageous is in computer science. And so if you're the person that's at the absolute vanguard of that, and you just make that part of your identity is I'm always adopting the newest thing, I'm always at the bleeding edge, then you're going to fare a lot better than somebody else that gets trapped. And so this is one of those where I get it, man. There's when you cannot see too far into the future, it is very scary. However, it is the world that you're in. And so the only mistake would be standing still, lamenting what is true. It's like you want to just get out there and remember Kobe Bryant's quote, "Boos don't block dunks." So get so good with AI that when you walk into a job interview, it's like, even if they hate you, even if everything about you, they're just like, oh God, but you've got a skill set that they look at and go, man, you were going to move our bottom line forward. You will be shocked at how far you can get if you can make somebody else money. And so the key is, how do you get so good using AI, get so good at computer science that you can make somebody money? If you can make someone money, you're always going to have a job.
I love that. And I like how you said that they don't have that baggage attached with the 40 years of their experience and all those things. Like, you are starting fresh. So your first step could be learning AI. That could be the equivalent of me learning Excel on my first job or whatever like that. And just utilizing the tool versus being scared of it.
Correct. And the only mistake is standing still.
Yeah.
And so if he's standing there, not improving his skill set every day and lamenting, I haven't got a job because AI is removing them, he's going to get farther and farther behind. This has got to be every day you show up, you go hard, pushing your skill set forward as hard as you can, as fast as you can. Start at the bottom if you have to, and just work your way up. It is so hard to find incredible talent. Become incredible talent, man. It's always in scarce supply.
I hear that. All right. This is probably my favorite question so far. This is from Anzac Huchin. What is real? How do you define real? If real is things you can taste and touch, then real is simply electric signals received by your brain. Morpheus.
I love the Morpheus quote.
I love it. Shout out to the Matrix.
Big shout out to the Matrix.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is entirely possible that nothing is quote unquote real. Mathematically speaking, the odds that we are living in an nth generation simulation border on 100% because of the following. Right now, we are working towards building virtual worlds that mimic every aspect of the real world. We are burrowing into the human brain to take control of the nervous system. And once you put those two things together, you now are literally living in a simulation. Now, what are the odds if we know that a civilization moves towards, with any rate of progress, because maybe it takes 1,000 years once you have the first computer, fine. But if you give any rate of progress, we will eventually get to the point where it is completely indistinguishable, that the real world is indistinguishable from the simulation. Now, if we know that to be true, and we know that humans will run a simulation of human society, which of course they will, even if it's just a 13-year-old trying to get an A on a science fair project, then we know that there will be a simulation in the simulation, in the simulation, in the simulation, in the simulation. So the odds then that we are in the ground truth border on zero. Okay, now look at somebody like Donald Hoffman, who talks about how he says that mathematically he can prove that there's no way that this isn't a simulation. Now, the question becomes, is he onto a metaphor for the brain, or is he actually saying this is obviously code? Now, for him, he's saying this is obviously code. I won't ask people to go that far, though I do recommend you watch the interviews I've done with him. They're so fun. But what I will say is, even if we're not in a simulation, even if this is ground reality, your brain is simulating reality. The stat that freaks me out the most is we only see 0.0035% of the available electromagnetic spectrum. So less than like 1/100%. I mean, it's absolutely tiny percentage of the of what's actually there that we see, but we feel like we're seeing everything. Okay, so if we know that we're not seeing everything, we're seeing some just absolutely tiny fraction of everything, then you know that your brain is filling in a lot of gaps. So there is a dime-sized hole right in the center of your vision, but none of us perceive it because our brain is literally filling that hole in with imagery. So all of that tells you that if the color of what you're wearing is the wavelength of light reflecting off of that, the photons reflecting off that hit my eye, but I don't see number of photons, wavelength, I just see black, you know that your brain is giving you a ton of these shortcuts to create a sense of a world that you can navigate through well. But this is why optical illusions work, because you're not actually seeing the truth. Okay, so once we're not seeing the truth, it becomes a question of how far removed from the truth are we? Are we like way removed and this is the Matrix and I'm a brain in a vat somewhere? Are we slightly removed in that I see the world slightly differently than you, but I mean, we're basically able to still function in the same way? Or is it something in between? But if you think of your brain as creating a simulation that you live inside of, you are going to make way better decisions. This is why I don't trust my emotions. My emotions are just a heuristic, a shortcut that my body tells me, speaking in emotion, the composite of all the different inputs. So you're getting trillions of inputs. There are microbes in your gut that are influencing your mood, that are influencing your desires. You can give a woman a bunch of shirts to smell. Like you have a guy wear a shirt, exercise, take it off, give the woman the shirt to smell. They did a study on this and they're like, look, I know this is super weird, but just sniff these shirts. They'll smell them and then put them in order of attractiveness. What do you mean? I can't see the person. Just do it. And the person will rank order them from the person they consider most attractive. Remember, all they see is the shirt. But the person they consider most attractive is the person with the immune system that is most diverse compared to theirs, down to the person that's most like them.
Okay, you lost me on that.
Okay, so the reason that you do that, the reason that we replicate sexually is because we are so, if we just cloned, which some creatures do, you now become so vulnerable to a parasite or a fungus or a bacteria.
You need to diversify your DNA.
Exactly. So you just keep mixing so that you have this diversity so that you can't just wipe out an entire population with that one vulnerability. So that becomes this just incredible mechanism that sexual reproduction builds into the system. So going back to the understanding your brain as this thing that is taking all this data point that you feel as an emotion, but if you break it down and understand that the emotion is simply all these data points have to go through this narrow bandwidth that is my conscious mind, then it's like, okay, wait a second. This is the simulation. This is not an accurate representation of reality. This is simply the fastest way that my body can aggregate all this data and give me something that I can react on very fast. Rustle in the bush, I'm scared, I jump, I move quickly. You turn around, it's your friend, whatever. There was never a danger present, or you see out of the corner of your eye a hose, but you think it's a snake, so you jump away. And so over evolutionary timeframes, these things get baked in, but they're just shortcuts. They are the simulation. And the reason I'm always obsessed with getting people to understand that is because the simulation can feed you. And again, I don't think we're actually in a simulation. I'm just saying to think of it like that is so fruitful because you realize, oh, just because something is giving me the emotion to jump or to lash out or to be angry or to be sad or to feel defeated, going back to that kid that's like, well, hold on, I can't get a job with my CS degree. And now he's contracting, now he's fearful. It's like, I'm gonna say, hold on, first principles thinking, what do people pay you for? They pay you to make them more money. Okay, I just need to figure out a way to help them make more money. What's going to be the skill set that I develop? And then it's like, I don't have to be the fastest runner when being chased by the bear. I just have to be faster than another guy who's going to get eaten. So it's like, you don't have to be the greatest CS person ever. You just have to be better than the other people that are interviewing for that job in that town in that company. So now it's like, okay, I'm not going to accept the emotion that I have as something I need to act on. I'm going to recognize it as the limitations of this simulated system trying to communicate all these crazy data points. And instead, I'm going to be goal-oriented.
Got you.
That was all from What's Real.
No. I got that. It came from like my realization of that came one time I was on mushrooms, and that's the first time I like hallucinated. And I was like, wait, my brain is lying to me. So going to that like pulled the thread that let me know like, okay, your emotions are real. Just because you're feeling something doesn't mean it's justified. Just because you see it, there might be more to it. So that was the first time I like questioned my brain. And to your point of what you're just saying, like sometimes we have to audit those emotions, those feelings, those urges, because they're not necessarily true.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, now once you start getting into true, I don't think people know what's true. I don't think any of us know what's true.
It's a whole nother bag.
Approximations. That's the best we can hope for. We'll get back to the episode in a moment, but first, I have a message for entrepreneurs. Every time a customer abandons their cart, you're not just losing one sale, you're losing a lifetime of revenue. Here's how to stop the bleeding. Successful brands like Allbirds and Skims know this one simple thing. That's why they choose Shopify. Think about this. Shopify's checkout system, ShopPay, boosts conversion by up to 50%. Whether your customers are scrolling through social media, browsing your website, or walking into your physical store, Shopify handles it all in one platform. The math, guys, is very simple. Businesses that want to grow with Shopify. And right now, you can join them with an incredible offer. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period. Just go to shopify.com/impact to upgrade your selling today. Again, that's shopify.com/impact. Now, let's get back to the episode.
All right. Michael J5PU. I seen him comment a lot. So thank you for commenting a lot, Michael.
Let's go, Michael.
Yeah. All right. And his question is, how do you feel about Bitcoin shifting from a form of currency to a store of wealth?
I love it. So I think people have heard me say this. Not everybody loves it, but I think governments have a moral obligation to allow their constituents to save money in a currency that can't be inflated. And so currency is probably a misleading way to say that. But if you think of money the way that Michael Saylor divides it, money is divided into currency, that thing that we give somebody to get a cup of coffee, and capital, so the thing that we store wealth in. Then I think this all begins to make a lot more sense. So whether Satoshi wanted Bitcoin to be a currency or whether he wanted it to have both properties, and it just so happens that Bitcoin is just way better at being a store of capital, I don't know. I've not read the white paper. Honestly, I don't even care about that. It comes down to, what does society adopt it as? Because to people that say Bitcoin has no values, yeah, that's true, but nothing does. So we decide certain things have value for whatever reason. And we have decided that Bitcoin has value for sure as a store of wealth. Maybe it will be a currency. Maybe it will have other uses down the road, but for sure as a store of wealth that can't be inflated, it is doing incredibly well. And I don't know at what point people will just accept that that's what it is. I don't know what it will take. I think some people will just never adopt it. And this is one of those where, like everything, crypto advances one funeral at a time. That's probably just the reality. And then also, guys, the right way to think of it is, it's a good trade now. And will it be a good trade in 100 years? Or it's a good hold is probably an even better way to say it. It's a good hold now. Will it be a good hold in 100 years? I don't know, man. So keep your head up, pay attention. And if things begin to change, then move. And unfortunately, given that we are in a world where your money can be inflated away, you have to, drinking game, you have to be looking for a place to put your money where either it's going to go up to beat inflation, or that at least it's not going to be inflated at all. And there may come a day where we get into that post-capitalist world and none of this matters, but it matters today.
That's honest. I appreciate it. All right. Big Bite Donut said, you said to take emotions out, and then you say you feel like the government has a moral obligation to Bitcoin. That's funny. I feel like you just said that. So
yeah, well, so what's interesting, I don't believe the government has a moral obligation to Bitcoin. Let's make sure that we cover that.
Oh, yeah.
Bitcoin is but one example of a store of wealth that can't be inflated.
Okay, sorry for the beginning. You believe the government has a moral obligation too. I want you to finish that. Yeah.
The government has a moral obligation to allow people to save in a store of wealth, not to use the word currency, a store of wealth that can't be inflated. Ideally, that can't be inflated or seized, quite frankly, because they have seized gold historically. And I don't think they're above seizing Bitcoin, but I think they have a moral obligation not to do that. Now, the underlying thing in his question, though, is that's not emotion. Morality is not an emotion. Morality is the very thing that's designed to remove emotion from the equation, so that when it's your loved one that got hit by a drunk driver, you don't go shoot the drunk driver in the face, because that's immoral. Even though I get it. Like, I would have the same impulse. If a drunk driver killed my wife, I would be very traumatized. Or let's make it worse. If somebody broke into my house and killed my wife, with my bare fucking hands, Drew, I would choke them until they were dead. Now, people shouldn't let me do that. That's the emotion that I'm saying to get out of the equation. You create morality so that when people's emotions are running away with them, everybody else is like, hey, we have morality for a reason. And this is why it gets really interesting. What happens when people don't believe in God? What does the morality anchor on? And people that, and I don't believe in God, but people that brush that aside like it doesn't matter, that's crazy. That is to misunderstand the human animal. We have to have it anchored on something. It has to be grounded.
A shared morality.
Yeah. Like, it's got to be grounded on something, because otherwise morality begins to shift with the winds, which of course we are seeing today. This is why people will cheer when a CEO of a company that they don't like gets killed. They're like, yay. That's your shifting morality. That's emotion. That's people that don't have an anchor to whether something is right or wrong.
Well said. All right. Warren Hurley, 5787 asks, what would happen to the dollar and Bitcoin if the U.S. government paid down the $36 trillion debt? Does the value of Bitcoin go down? ?
I think it might. Yeah.
Because
So
the currency will be safe now?
yeah, look, I don't know. I want to be very clear. I can't see around the corner. I don't know how the market would respond, but I would be very surprised. I wouldn't be as fiendish about Bitcoin if the government were fiscally responsible. Tom Bilyeu's personal reaction is that the government is spending insanely, that like every empire ever in history, they cannot avoid the temptation of printing money. And so they are stealing my purchasing power, and I have got to get out of their system. And if they were fiscally responsible, they weren't doing that, that I was able to even just save my way to success, I would be very happy. Dude, I never wanted to learn about economics. I never wanted to learn about finance. I just wanted to be good at making money. And if I could just be good at making money and saving it, I would be very happy. But once I realized that all the money I was saving, they were quietly draining out the back by stealing my purchasing power via inflation, I was like, oh my God, now I've got to learn about this shit. That really bothers me, like really deeply, profoundly, truly. I spent so many years, I spent decades of my life getting good at business so that I could control the resources. And then when you get it and you realize how rapidly they siphon it off, Jesus, man. And that's like, I don't have to worry about my next meal. Now imagine you do have to worry about your next meal and they're still stealing your purchasing power. That's insane. And this is why people say inflation hurts the poor the most. So when I see someone like Bernie Sanders wanting to spend more and more money, I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, you know, he has to know. You're stealing from the poor to give back to the poor. It's so fucking weird. So balance the budget, make it so that people can save to protect their family. And look, of course, we can get into education and making sure that people have better opportunities to navigate the world well. I am fucking here for that. But yeah, that's why I say that. So what do I think happens to Bitcoin and the dollar? Only good things happen to the dollar, that is for sure, because now the world isn't panicking. They're going to buy U.S. treasuries. They want their risk-free return. Yeah,
investment is coming back to the US.
So now we stabilize. Right now, China's selling off as fast as they can. Russia's never going to touch U.S. debt ever again. A bunch of other countries are looking at that like, well, I'm certainly not going to put my money in your hands so that you can seize it. That's insane. So yeah, it would be very good for the dollar and a question mark for Bitcoin. I would certainly be less hardcore about it.
All right. Johnny Tips asks, I agree that the invitation to the inauguration is the right move.
Talking about Xi Jinping, I assume.
Yep. Tom, you stated you feel Xi Jinping's leadership style is immoral. Could you explain on exactly what aspects you don't agree with? Okay,
so I think anything top down is immoral. When you are telling people this is how you're going to act, this is how you're going to behave, this is what you're going to do, I fully acknowledge that I am a product of time and place. I grew up in America. We are in an individualistic society. My North Star is human flourishing. I believe autonomy is one of the 5 things that motivate the human animal. I don't think that people like being told what to do. They will put up with it when everything is going well, but man, oh man, when things start going in a wrong direction, that's when people are like, yo, I am not here for this. And when the individual doesn't matter and we all live individual lives, that is a level of gnarly that's just too hard for me to embrace and certainly difficult to explain. So I will give people 3 books that they should read if they want to understand why I think collectivist societies are a nightmare in waiting. Everybody should run their own thing. Nobody should think that I'm trying to put my viewpoint on people. I'm just telling you how I view the world. I want to be very clear about that. Read the books, The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn about the Russian gulags. Read The Red Famine about the self-imposed famine that I believe it was Stalin. I can never remember if it's Stalin or Lenin. But anyway, that they created in the Ukraine. And then read Mao, The Unknown Story. Dude, it is berserk. It can go so wrong. It's dehumanizing. So I believe that we inhabit an individual body for a reason. And when people are telling you from the top down, this is how you're going to behave, we're back to my beef with the elites, people that think that they know better. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't want people to think about other people. I do. I think it is extremely moral. I think it's extremely good to see yourself as being interconnected with other people. And I believe everybody should pursue honorable goals. Now, an honorable goal is something that elevates you and others. But I don't believe that people should be able to tell you from the outside, this is what you're going to do.
Love that. Love that. All right. Elak Mandante 901 said, why should we, American here, be any different than any other empire who has risen and collapsed in the course of history?
We will. That no one escapes it. So every empire ever in all of human history, and people are going to take exception to me calling American empire, whatever, anybody that had the reserve currency, which I don't know what you want to call it, the big boy on the block, they've all fallen, always and forever, all throughout human history. And I don't look backwards at a never-ending string of something and go, oh, but this time it's going to be different. I go, this time it's going to be the same. But getting the timeline right is next to impossible. So will America, as the global superpower, fall apart in the next 10 years, 100 years, 200 years? I don't know. But it will eventually fall. It just, so history says.
I respect that. All right. User TV something random character said, sorry, I'm getting bot vibes, but this is a really good question, so I had to pick it up. Empires need money, land, power, and control allies and enemies, and slavery to be an empire. How did the U.S. become an empire? And then second follow-up question, why do we have enemies? Why are China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea the quote-unquote bad guys?
Okay, we're going to need to break that down so that I can hold them in my head. How did America become an empire? Okay, so woo-wee, this is a long and sordid story. So first, the New World was discovered. That's a nice triggering word. The New World was discovered, and we started sending people here from all over the world. Now, all of those people were coming for opportunity. You do not flee a place and go across an ocean at a time where something like 30% of people died whenever crossing the Atlantic. You do not do that unless you are trying to get away from something, unless you believe that despite all that risk, you've got to do it. So all the people that took that risk were the mavericks, were the people that were desperate, the hungry, the aggressive. So they come here. All right, now you're really like, this is frontier spirit. This is like most people are going to die in the winter kind of stilo.
Oregon Trail type.
Well, that even comes later, but yeah, like exactly that type of person. And so you're collecting people from all over the world that are seeking opportunity, that are thinking for themselves, that probably have a problem with authority, which is why they fled. They are not risk averse, so they're willing to take gargantuan risks. They're willing to work extremely hard, and they survived all of those harsh conditions. That's like the deal. That's what we're descendant from. Okay, so then you have to fully acknowledge that we also obliterated the people that were here, largely through disease, but I imagine that is of no consolation to them whatsoever. And then the ones that we couldn't get with disease, we got with warfare. So, and this is something I know is going to come up because we have a question later about Israel-Palestine. To settle something, because you're asking how we became an empire. I am not justifying any of this. I want to be very clear. I am simply giving you the gist. And there are historians that will give you a way better breakdown, but I'm giving you the gist. We then begin to warfare so that we can get complete and total control of the country. Constantly expanding. And there are some incredible books. There's a book called, I think it's called The Summer of the Autumn Moon. That's going to be close if it's not the exact title. Holy hell, about the Comanche Indians who really delayed the expansion of the Western frontier. Like that would have been a hard time to be on either side. Anyway, just an absolute back and forth bloodbath on both sides. So, okay, you've got that like just hardcore motherfucker that ends up being the sort of American spirit. Obviously, we are British colonies. I'm sort of jumping around history because the Wild West comes a lot later. But we are a colony of the British for a long time, despite, at first it's some French and British and all over the place. You get the Dutch, which is why New York used to be New Amsterdam, on and on and on. But we bring these people from all over the world. We decide that we don't want taxation without representation. And so we end up overthrowing. And God, I'm trying to condense a lot of history here. So Then we get all of these rebel spirits that end up fighting in this really sort of guerrilla warfare way. We end up winning the Revolutionary War, basically a war of attrition. We boot them out. Okay, skipping a whole lot of stuff. Then World War I comes around. Because we're over in America, we are able to stay out of the primary amount of the bloodbath. So we don't come in until the end. And so we have not spent all of our money fighting in World War I. We end up essentially being the only big economy to not get obliterated in the West anyway, at the end of World War I. So we are now marching towards becoming the world's reserve currency. We may have been de facto at that point anyway, but we're really going to cement it at the end of World War II. So Europe, once again, just gets absolutely decimated, but now we've got bombs. And so we are obliterating cities. This is no longer trench warfare. This is just bomb Dresden until it is smoldering ash. So Europe is just demolished. They're wildly in debt, primarily to the Americans. And so now we are literally the global superpower. And we do something absolutely incredible. Instead of colonizing everybody, we help everybody rebuild. And you could say that we briefly colonized Japan, but we make them a huge trade partner, which ends up becoming very prosperous for both of us. They end up making extraordinarily cheap goods for us, and by essentially working their population to death. Whole nother story with the salaryman vibe, if people know that sort of part of Japan's still lingering history. But they also had an incredible trade partner. So Japan still owns like some ungodly amount of the world's assets. Absolutely incredible. All right. So that sets us up to be the world reserve currency. Because we're in a geographically protected space, we are untouched, except for Pearl Harbor, man. We are just untouched. So pristine, we don't have to rebuild anything here. Everybody owes us a ton of money. We help everybody rebuild. Europe becomes like this incredible ally to us. Japan becomes this incredible ally to us. We then very quickly get a common enemy, which is Russia. It gives us all this thing to galvanize around. And now we're just the big boy on the block. And we end up having the 70 years of prosperity. We're not technically an empire, but like, look, that's a gist. And there are historians literally clutching pearls, having seizures right now because of all the things that I left out and how just sort of skimming across the surface that was. And that's probably an important thing to understand about me. I get the gist of things so that I can navigate them well and prosper. That's my whole thing. I'm not going to be a historian. I have no intention of learning those stories better. I know them well enough to understand where we are so that I can understand the economics of everything, so I can understand how to move forward. But they asked, I answered.
And then for the follow-up, why are we always, it seems, at war with these kind of countries? Why is China the enemy?
Why do they have to be the enemy?
Russia?
Why do they have to be the enemy?
Why are they the bad guy?
Technically, they don't have to be the enemy, but this is a power game. So anarchy rules at the international level, and everybody wants to be the big boy because one thing that you can do is you can socialize your losses across all of the world. So when I talk about inflation and them inflating the money supply, everybody that owns US debt gets inflated. Anybody that holds dollars gets inflated. It's not just American citizens. We're the only country in the world that can do that. As America, we can make every country deal with our inflation. That's amazing. And this is why every empire ends up falling, because they just can't resist. So you can spread your inflation, your deficits on everybody. I mean, it's a very privileged position, and this is why we should be very careful. So anyway, other people want that privilege. Nobody likes to be told what to do. Everybody wants to be the big boy, at least in their region. And so as we begin to feel our power eroding, we're going to push back. Nobody gives up their power. Shout out to Eric Weinstein, who I literally love as a human being, no off camera, but he made a comment one time that I was just like, what? Where he said, basically, the boomer generation needs to hand power over to the next generation. I'm like, that's not how it works. People are going to hold on to power until they are fucking dead, man. That is why you have to rip it out of their cold, dead hands. Like the next generation has to fight for their spot. The problem is because we have an inverted demographic pyramid, there are other reasons, but just to round it to something simple, it's tough. The other generations just aren't big enough. And so they control a ton of wealth, and they came right after we became the global superpower and our currency hadn't been inflated to death yet. They were able to get on property ladders when prices were still low, that you could make a wage like working at a gas station and feed a family of 42. I mean, it's like just every advantage that you can imagine. And then by inflating, they pull the ladder up behind them and we're left in the situation that we're left in. But mark my words, they will never hand it off. They will simply die and retire, and so their business will have to be handed to somebody. That's the only way this is going to happen. You always have to outperform. You always have to outperform, man. And I get it. I get why people are bitter. I understand it. But the world is that way. It would be immoral to smother your parents or grandparents, boys and girls. Okay? So we are where we are. Outperform. This is one of the reasons that AI is such an exciting hope, is that it could potentially drive costs down. This is where I get myself in trouble with economists, but deflation should be in certain ways. I'm hedging my bets. Why am I hedging my bets? I don't understand this well enough. I know I'm at the edge of my understanding, so bear with me. However, the government captures the upside of goods getting less expensive over time, which is the natural direction things should move in. It is only because of inflation that everything goes up. So yeah, we should be able to reap those benefits, and we can't. But people just have to fight and get better.
I'm not going to deny that you're brilliant, Tom, but the way you refer to the common or average person as not having the cognitive horsepower is quite frankly the same condescending attitude that has made the elite so hated. Democratic philosophy relies on faith in the intellect of the average person being higher than most give them credit for. What generates wealth in today's environment isn't an accurate gauge of intellect if one accounts for the mass majority who aren't sociopaths driven by wealth and power. If the average person doesn't have enough cognitive horsepower, then why is it the most educated among us who are the least to smell bullshit when propagandized?
Who are the last to smell bullshit? Okay, so going back to the beginning of the question. So I'm really glad that you're asking this question, because people are misunderstanding a concept that I have called the dumb voter problem. So I want to be really clear about what I'm saying. I agree with this guy. You cannot make a determination about who's too dumb to listen to or who's too dumb to vote for. That's my whole thing. We can't let that happen. That is the whole fucking thesis. Ask people what they think should be done with dumb people, and you will know whether you should listen to them or not. And if they say dumb people need to be silenced, we need to take their social media accounts away, immediately that person is on that topic, they're my enemy. Now, there are plenty of people who I respect and listen to that help me on 1,000 other areas that I'm going to listen to. But on that topic, they're my enemy. And I disagree, and I will fight against them forever, for all time, because that is so fucking dangerous.
Period. Walter Raluca asks, wars and murders have happened since the beginning of human history. Is it any different from what our ancestors or grandparents experienced?
No, is the short answer. I think the reality is war has gotten more humane. That's hard to say. War seems like the most devastating, disgusting, horrifying, just grief-inducing thing that humans can engage in. But if you are a student of history, you realize that boy, oh boy, has it gotten a lot better. Vlad the Impaler is always the one that comes to mind. Vlad was being invaded by a much bigger army. And so he created, I can't remember if it's 2 miles, 10 miles, but it was miles of road with humans put on greased pikes so that they would die really slowly, so that the invading army would hear all of these people dying and go, I don't know that we want to fuck with this guy. And it ended up working, and he ended up saving his country, but goddamn, at what cost? And if you want to hear more horrifying shit, read about Genghis Khan. Dude, he would be like, all right, everybody, just come out. You're going to be fine. Come on out. Everything's going to be good. Don't make us ransack your fucking place. If you come out, we're going to leave you alone. They'd come out and they'd just kill them all. And so there's no social media. There's nobody watching. Like, you just get fucking hacked to death.
No cell phone video.
Yeah. Dude. So war now is still horrible. If you've seen any of the footage of drones chasing people down and dropping grenades on them, that's horrifying. And goddamn, That is unnerving. That is some Black Mirror shit. I don't want to have anything to do with that. But back in the day, like that was heinous. So this is not me saying, yay for modern warfare, but it at least isn't 2 miles of people on pikes.
Glass half full on that one.
There you go.
All right. On a lighter question. Thank you, Scott Melville. We need one of these. Tom, what is the next rung on the ladder to becoming the next Walt Disney?
Wow. Having those questions back to back is fascinating. The next rung on becoming the next Disney is building the video game. I think that's going to be our big thing. We've got comics that are out right now that you can find on Tapas. Go check those out. All systems go. We've got a feature film that we're trying to get made, animated, called Mary Mods. I'll keep you guys posted on that. But the big thing, the marquee thing that I'm focused on from that perspective is gaming. Gaming is just so much bigger than anything else. So if we can pull this off, we're very much an indie studio. We're small, we're scrappy. But if we can, that's the only thing that we're doing right now that can make us a multi-billion-dollar company. So that is the thing that I focus on a lot.
Nice. And that leads into Ricky Martinez 4951's question. Please tell us more about Project Kyzen or link us to a promo, please. So,
well, we can certainly link them to a promo.
Drop a link in the description.
Telling you more about Project Kyzen right now, what people can play today. So my whole thesis was I want to, as an indie developer, I want to build in public. I want to build with the community. I want to get people in. I want to, for every segment of the game that we have to build, I want to create like a mini game around that so people can play it and give us feedback on whether it's working. So the movement, the combat, the UI, UX, all that stuff. I want to get feedback on all of that. And that's worked like a charm. It's been incredible. Shout out to the Kyzen community. Those guys are amazing. Our map building. So we've got actual players in there building their own maps for other players to come on and play. Absolutely fantastic. But it's all building towards a bigger game mode that when we started doing it, basically, I felt like we were inventing the term, but other people were clearly working on it now. So you're starting to get that first group of people coming out with these known as Extraction Royale. So it's got the DNA of both an extraction game and a battle royale game. So I won't give away too much here because we're going to be letting the community come and demo this in a couple months. So very excited about that. And I was saying this in one of our previous episodes. It's the first time where I feel a little bit like I need to guard some of the things that we're doing. Only execution matters, but there are bigger game companies that can move a lot faster than we can. So I don't necessarily want to give all of the cool ideas away. But we think that if we execute on what we've got on paper, that we will be different and better.
Nice. Love it. Project Kyzen, link in bio. Check it out, guys.
There it is.
All right. We got a couple mindset questions. This is from Leon's the Junior 4636. The world is entirely divided right now. And for someone who doesn't resonate with any of the groups formed by the division, it can feel real isolated. How can you be yourself, not giving in the pressures of conformity? I hate today. How can you be yourself and not give in to the pressures and conformity by both major sides, but still remain connected with the outside world? And what can we do as individuals to try and diminish the division of our society?
Okay, so this is where people have to build a belief system and a value system. The only way to not be swayed just by what other people are saying or by the pressure is to understand what you believe and to have an anchoring mechanism. So here's how I built my belief system and value system. Okay, so first of all, you need to have a North Star. My North Star is human flourishing. I would highly encourage people to have an honorable North Star, meaning it isn't just good for you, it's good for those around you as well, for the largest group possible. Okay, once you have that North Star, now it becomes a question of how do you move towards that North Star? So for me, utility in service of moving towards an honorable goal is the way that I build up my belief system. So my values are how I believe the world ought to be. My beliefs are how I believe the world is. Remember, we're not good at identifying truth. So beliefs are actually decisions because you're going to decide what through testing you realize has the highest predictive validity. And then how the world ought to be is a moral quandary for the ages that historically has been determined by religion. I believe religion is just a way of encapsulating all the things that have worked over a very long period of time. So beliefs and values, once you have those mapped out, like you know what you believe, you can articulate it, you can tell somebody else. I have literally written mine down for a long time. If you just search Tom Bilyeu belief system, it will pop up. I haven't tried it in a while, so I don't know if it still works. But I have literally published my belief system. And then what I'm constantly doing is checking my belief system against the real world. And so I will try a thing and see, does this work? And as it does, I refine and refine and refine my belief system. So there's a reason that my belief system, one, I have changed over time, and two, really didn't begin to solidify until I was in my mid 30s. I just, by that point, tried so many things and seen things be successful and seen things fail that now if somebody challenges something that I believe, one, I'm super open-minded because I care about utility. So if you come at me and like, that belief is stupid, I'm like, oh, damn, I've gotten this far with a belief that's broken. Please tell me what the thing is that will allow me to move towards my goal with more efficiency. So what is the thing, if I believed, it would better predict the outcome of my actions? Cool, that's all I'm looking for. And so when something comes along, like when we went through what was a very disorienting moment for me, where it was like men and women are the same, this is all a cultural construct. I was like, what the fuck? Like that has no predictive validity in my life whatsoever. And so from looking at toddlers to looking at adults, when you assume that the boys and girls are going to act the same, there's literally no predictive validity. It's super fucking bizarre. Everything will be very confusing to you. The second you go, men and women are different, and they're different in these ways, then it was like, oh my God, this is all so predictable. So yeah, it's you're looking for predictive validity, and hopefully you're using your value system to move you towards building a world that would be better, not just for you, but others.
I love it. All right, the next three questions are kind of the same question, asked in different ways. So
right.
This is from Joshua Ishmael.
Should we just lump them together? Or do you want to ask each one?
I just want to shout out their names. Josh Ishmael, 9312, Paula Gutierrez, 4615, and Reina Martinez, 13. Thank you, guys. Basically, how do you invest in the stock market when you don't have enough to pay bills? How can I own equities if I make $19 an hour in California? Drew and Tom both agree the game is rigged, but I'm too broke to get into it. So if somebody's feeling this way, that they want to get into it, but they're struggling to make ends meet, they feel like they don't have enough to get ahead, they don't feel like they have enough to invest in the stock market, what's your advice to them?
All right, there are two levers before us, and that is it. Don't spend any time lamenting this. This is how the world is. You either need to reduce your expenses or make more money. Period. Full stop. End of story. I want to break people of this belief that a minimum wage job is meant to set you up for life. Get more fucking skills, get out from under that minimum wage job. If you are not capable of getting out from under that minimum wage job, then you have to find a way to reduce your expenses. There is no other answer. That's the bad news. The only shot you've got is AI drives the cost of energy so low that everything becomes cheap as fuck, and we're post-capitalist and you don't have to worry about it. In which case, you're pro-innovation, you're not pro-government. You need innovation to get to that point. Let's be very clear about that. Okay. Now, assuming that you can reduce costs or make more money, then we're going to siphon some of that, even if it's $19, we're going to siphon some of that off and start slowly investing in whatever you think is safest. What would I do? And people should be very careful. This is not financial advice, but this is what I would do. Right now, the sort of lowest risk, highest volatility, there's still risk. I want to be very clear. You could lose everything, but the lowest risk, highest volatility thing is Bitcoin. Okay. It's not a pro Bitcoin pitch. That is a pro Bitcoin pitch. It's what I would do, just to be clear. But look, man, I want to be very clear. Investing is gambling. Investing is gambling. There are no sure bets. Anyway, because it's now been around for roughly 15 years, because over the course of that 15 years, it's gone up by 60% annual rate of return year after year after year. Any one moment you could look at and it could be a fucking disaster for a couple of years. But when you stretch it out to the 15-year time horizon, it averages out to 60% average rate of return, annual rate of return, excuse me. So that is unbelievable. But this is not a pitch for that. This is a pitch for creating a differential between how much you make and how much you need to live. So if I'm making $19 an hour, I'm racing to build my skill set up as fast as humanly possible because I don't want to be making $19 an hour forever. And again, if you can make somebody else money or you can solve a problem for somebody, you're going to get paid. So focus on skill acquisition like crazy. And if you have to live with a bunch of other people, then do it. I used to have roommates for a lot of years. I used to manage apartment complexes for a lot of years, nightmarish, but it kept my rent really low. So there are all kinds of ways, if you're willing to do a ton of research, ask around, there are ways that you can, like And of course, very few people are ever going to manage apartment complexes. So don't take that as like, go do that. I'm just saying there are many things like that that you can do. So find ways to reduce your expenses, move back in with your parents, get a ton of roommates, get a job that's near where you live so that you don't need a car, you don't need insurance, you can walk to work. I mean, just if this were really the situation that I was in, I would be thinking of everything I could do to make sure that my lifestyle was a $12 an hour lifestyle and I was making $19 an hour. I'm going to take, let's say, $2 to play, and then the rest of it, I'm going to be socking away in something that I think is going to return. I'm a big believer. As much fun, there's a fucking meme about me sitting on multiple chairs. Mm-hmm. Listen, everybody that thinks it's fucking stupid to sit on multiple chairs, you do you, baby. Because I'm telling you, over a long enough time period, you want to make sure that you hedge your fucking bets. Unless you believe you somehow are uniquely capable of seeing the future, whoa, that is just a crazy strategy. I don't have that risk appetite, and I have an appetite for risk. Now, look, if people bet on one thing and that one thing pays off, yeah, then they make gargantuan wins. I'm happy for them. I don't get mad. I don't do schadenfreude. I want to see them win. Go get your bag, baby. But I'm not going to fucking do that. And people can laugh at me all they fucking want. I have a strategy based on my beliefs and my value system, and I'm going to stick with it. So I highly encourage people to take a similar all-weather strategy, as Ray Dalio would call it. And that's what I would do.
Angela Marshall, 4179, said, I created a reading program for pre-readers about 20 years ago. It's 100% done and ready to go, but I got scared and I just stopped. It's been in my attic for 20 years. As a 61-year-old limping woman with no money, what is my next step in this day and age?
This question breaks my heart. Okay, but they're giving me a chance, so I want to reach inside their soul and see if I can invigorate them. The thing that kills dreams is fear and boredom. You are going to fail, but failing does not make you a failure. Failure is the most information-rich data stream on planet Earth. The only mistake that you can make in life is standing still. If she had put that out into the market and it had failed, fine, she's going to learn. So I put my video game out into the market and the first round was trash and everybody told me it's trash. I was cool. In what way is it trash? Awesome. I'm going to make it better. Put it out again. Still trash. Awesome. Put it out again. Ooh, this is starting to get fun, but it's still too small. I can only play for a couple of hours. Then I start getting bored. Okay, cool. Like all this feedback is great. I have long believed, Drew, that my real superpower is I can be laughed at longer than the next person. And I understand that this is a game of skill acquisition. I just have to get better and better and better and better. And on a long enough timeline, I can get 100 times better at anything. And when you start thinking about being 100 times better at making money, 100 times better at software development, whatever it is that you're trying to do, you could get 100 times better at it. Now it's like pour yourself into getting good at that thing, iterate quickly, be absolutely fearless, put it into the market, see what happens, come up with the next thing when that one fails. You are going to fail a lot. This is why that Michael Jordan commercial from so many years ago was so brilliant. He goes through all of the things that he fucked up. I've missed this many game-winning shots. I've missed this many shots from the free throw line. I've lost this many games. And then he was like, and that's why I win. Because you're willing to take the shot. You're willing to push yourself, to put yourself out there, to get better. And that is the only path forward. Mm-hmm. So success is a game of attrition. What I mean by that is a big part of the reason that I've won in my life is just most people that are smarter than me, more talented than me, they're more emotionally fragile than me. And so they quit. They don't like the way it feels. They've built their self-esteem around being better, faster, stronger, smarter. Now, if instead you build your self-esteem around learning, around being willing to stare nakedly at your inadequacies. In fact, let me share an embarrassing stat. In the interview that I did with Saylor, I asked, is it Riot Games? Because he kept mentioning Riot, this, that, and the other has Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And I was like, Riot Games? Is that what you're talking about? And there was collective laughter in the Bitcoin community. And somebody put in the comments, dude, that's so embarrassing. You should go delete that moment. I was like, why the fuck would I delete that? I didn't know the answer, so I asked the question. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're a fucking moron and you want to stay stupid, by all means, be so afraid of embarrassing yourself that you don't ask a question. If you want to grow powerful, ask the question, let people laugh at you, and now you have the answer. Mm-hmm. And remember, skills have utility. So when I get that piece of information, I can now do something, maybe not that exact one, but when you stack this stuff up, you can now do things that other people can't do. That's how you end up outperforming. But if you're afraid to do it, then you're never going to make progress. Now, first of all, 61 is young, baby. It's young. She's got a lot of good years. So I'm really hopeful that one, she ditches the identity of limping. If I've got to tell myself, I shattered my femur, I walk with swagger. Dude, reframe it, man.
Yeah.
I get it's a lie. I get it's total bullshit. But letting that you limp be a part of your identity, you're a woman that was able to code this thing or build this thing, whatever it was, and that could help people. Just tell yourself, I'm the type of person that's willing to learn. I've got the guts to put this out there, get feedback, make it better, iterate, and now your identity is that of the learner. It's anti-fragile.
Yeah.
The more people attack you, the stronger you get. When you have the fear of like, I need people's validation, now you're stuck. Because people will be able to shut you down just by laughing at you. They'll be able to shut you down by pointing out that you don't know something. It's an awesome quote. Awesome quote. As the island of my knowledge grows, so grows the shore of my ignorance. Meaning, the more you learn, the more you realize, oh my God, there's so much to learn. I'm never going to learn all this stuff. So I know I'm never going to know everything, obviously. So again, I'm trying to stack skills that have utility that will move me towards my goal. But you have to know what your goal is. You've got to define it. Say, I'm going to get there by this date, and then I'm just going to run a bunch of experiments to get there. I am not going to hide in the closet. I'm not going to worry about people that make fun of me. I'm not going to worry about embarrassing myself in public, which I am undoubtedly going to do. I'm just going to fucking learn. And failure is the most information-rich data stream on planet Earth, meaning failure is the fastest way to learn.
I love it. Love it. And Johan7309 said, I would love to know more about how you use the DOT system with your employees. How do you influence adoption by your team? And what are some issues you had when you implemented the system?
All right, so DOTS is a feedback system created by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is the largest hedge fund manager of all time. So nobody's been more successful betting on the market than Ray Dalio. Absolutely fucking insane. Okay, so he creates a saying where he knows I'm blind to something. So Ray is a classic example of somebody who thought he was right about something, went all in and lost everything. So Tom does not play that game. Ray realizes I don't know everything. And as much as I do know, I'm going to get blindsided by something. So I want to surround myself with very smart people and put them in a cultural situation where they are compelled to tell me what they think. So if I'm doing something stupid or they think that I'm blind to something, they are culturally compelled, meaning if you want to stay in this company culture, you are going to say what you think is true. Even if you're worried that that's going to upset me or hurt my feelings or make me mad or put you at risk of getting fired, if you believe it to be true, you are going to say it. And so we implemented that system here. I would say, look, it is not perfect. It is very hard to get people to say hard things. I also tend to attract people that have an easy time hearing hard things, but have a hard time saying hard things. So we are I'm constantly reminding all of us, hey, give that critical feedback. The reason that I do it is because I know I'm blind to things and I need smart people to tell me what the things are that I'm blind to. And that just makes me better, gives me more skills, allows me to do more in the real world. So that's why we do it. That's what the system is. It is a system of giving dots on a whole host of traits that somebody might have. Could be work ethic, could be demonstrated mastery, things like that. You give them a rating from 1 to 10, 1 being you're absolute garbage, 10 being, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And now none of us take any one dot seriously, but we all look for patterns. And so it helps us get a sense of what we're actually good at, what we're not good at. And so that's really, really useful when you can get people to do it.
I love it. Last thing, we have a special comment. This has happened since we first started Tom's show, the Tom Bilyeu show officially. When we were celebrating Trump's victory, there was a lot of comments talking about the comparisons between Trump, Hitler, fascism, authoritarianism, totalitarianism. So we asked a friend of ours to kind of jump on. I want you to kind of cue up this next segment that we're going to.
Yeah. So listen, you guys, when I said that, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that people were comparing Trump to Hitler. People were like, but you can't compare Hitler at the end when he's doing the concentration camps and the Holocaust. You can't compare that to Trump now. Trump is on a slippery slope to becoming that. So you've got to compare early Hitler to current Trump. So we brought on What If, Alt-Hist, and another historian that he knows named Marek to answer the question, is early Hitler like current Trump? And I'll let them take it away and answer it. Here it is. Enjoy. Remember, you guys asked. I want to go back and really take a second to define something very clearly. What does it mean to be Hitler-like?
What it means to be Hitler-like, I would say, is to have a vision to structure society in a way that benefits the core of some ethno-nationalist vision, right? And I think there are a bunch of traits that we sort of add on to that to make it look more like Hitler in particular. But I think when people, right, there's the peripheral end of somebody who's loud, obnoxious, and racist, right? And I think that's mostly what people see, right? And if that's the only vector through which you're measuring this, then sure, maybe Trump is loud, obnoxious, and racist, right? But if you dig a little deeper, that doesn't line up anymore, right? Trump is not envisioning a society where he concentrates power in his hands and develops an ethno-nationalist state. He's not taking any steps in that direction. Project 2025, if you look at it, is really about decentralizing the government as possible. Somebody who's trying to become a dictator is not trying to decentralize power, right? That just wouldn't be the case.
Okay, so we've got loud, obnoxious, racist, and this is Hitler, and centralizing power. Rudyard, would you add anything to that list of what it means to be Hitler-like?
I'm going to just rephrase what Marek said, where people don't use the word fascist correctly. And this is something that really gets under my skin, because there was this big psychological survey called the Authoritarian Personality about 1947. And this book has had incredible historic influence, because the thesis of the book is that socially conservative values and traditional family structures are the cause of fascism. This is a huge origin of how our modern society conceptualize politics and culture in a way that's just completely incorrect. Because you have communist societies that are the most bloody authoritarians, totalitarians ever. There's loads of leftist totalitarianism. And then you have lots of socially conservative free societies. In fact, you do need a certain degree of social conservatism in order to maintain a free society. And when people think about Trump, they're thinking, this guy is a racist, and being a racist makes you like a Nazi. What the people fail to realize is travel the world. Almost every country in the world is racist by their definition. You go to Africa, go to China, go to Poland, go to Mexico or Cuba, and you'll see stuff that, if you're a leftist, you'll see as horrifying racism on a completely casual basis. And Trump is very, very unracist by the standards of 99% of humanity. I mean, there's some statements he's made that can be kind of kind of portrayed as it. But if you go to like some non-Western country, if you go to Mexico, if you go to Turkey, even, I don't know, like Hungary, no, people are gonna that sounds completely innocuous. Our racism sensors are so finely tuned that we're just completely hysterical. And what I would say separates Hitler from Trump is Hitler, as Marek said, has this very coherent sense of this is the German race, and everything is structured around it, where your work, your religion, your social life, how your children are raised is all controlled by the totalitarian state which serves the German race. And it's this massive vision of the colonization of all Eastern Europe and the genocide of that area for the German Lebensraum. Trump has none of that stuff. Trump is not a totalitarian who has this vast ideological scheme. If Trump was truly Hitler, he would have a map in the White House of America conquering all of North America and the settlement of Central America with American settlers. That's what Nazism stands for.
Right.
Now, what do you say, though, when he's now started talking about Mexico and Canada becoming the 51st and 52nd states?
That's just a joke. That's never going to happen. Everyone who's not insane perceives that as a joke.
Right. Well, and the thing is of course, these people want to take it seriously because it helps their argument, right? But yeah, I mean, there's no way you can see that as anything other than a joke realistically, right? It would not be practical. Nobody would support that kind of a move. And Trump is a troll.
Really fast,
right?
Marek, one thing I want to make sure that we don't do is we don't want to say he'll be stopped. We at the end, we'll get to,
Sure.
even if we think that he is a fascist and he's authoritarian and everybody's right to be worried, will American democracy hold? I think that's a very fair argument to keep in your back pocket. But first, I just
Sure.
want to go through some of the things that we've already put on the table. So to be Hitler-like is to be loud, obnoxious, racist, centralizing in wanting to centralize governmental power, expansionist by nature. That expansionist by nature was definitely on my list in terms of what was Hitler. For better or worse, I wrote a screenplay about cult leaders. And so I researched Hitler and I read Mein Kampf. So I've seen firsthand it's absolute insanity for people that haven't read it. And he was very hell-bent on expansionism. You know, this is all coming after World War I. The Treaty of Versailles was so brutal to Japan, was so brutal to Germany that he was like, we're not paying these people back. I'm going to rise you all back up. We're going to, get our economy running again. And basically understood that he had to eat up a bunch of Europe and going into Russia to create for him what was basically the west of the United States, where you could just expand, and people could find their fortunes and have property and build homes. He was like, that's going to be Russia. So we're going to be able to go into Russia and just take it all over, and people will be able to push into the vast, untamed territory there. So to your point, it's a very clear vision. It's very expansion in its orientation. But I would say if you're not saying the use of force to get what you want, you're not getting close to Hitler. First, he comes out of the military, is wounded in World War I, is certainly no stranger to violence. He has the brown shirts. Like, this is somebody who is going to get what he wants. And I can't remember, hopefully you guys will remember, but it was Hitler that burned down the building. I don't know if it was Parliament, but they go in, they burn it down. They say that the Jews were the ones that did it. And if I'm not mistaken, that's what leads to Kristallnacht, which is the whole night where they go and smash everything that the Jews own, but using it as this excuse, which is another thing that I would say is that the just fiendish control, manipulation of the media, which I will say is one thing you guys are going to have to combat, because Trump may not have control of the mainstream media, but he's done a phenomenal job of using alternative media. So has he been truthful? I think you guys are going to have your hands full with that one. But I think that's also an extremely important thing to be Hitler-like. Creating a common enemy. This is another thing that I see Trump doing that I think is very Hitler-like. When you read Mein Kampf, and he's like, we need to give people an enemy. It gives people something to rally around. Maybe I'll make it the Jews. I mean, it was like just somebody going through this, like, well, we're going to need to do this. They've always made a good enemy historically. I'm probably going to use them. Like, it's absolutely bananas, the cold and calculating way that he laid it out. Cries of election fraud. So trying to use the democratic system against itself to abolish democracy is another thing that I would say makes you Hitler-like. Hitler wanted dictatorial power, so he wanted to centralize. You've already covered that. So those would be the things that I would put on the table as making you Hitler-like. Do you guys think I've missed anything in addition to what you guys have already said?
I think that about covers it. The way I'm going to triangulate this is I'm going to throw in a third variable. Let's pick a random crappy third world dictator. Let's look at Mugabe, the dictator of Zimbabwe, who made their currency so worthless. It was valued in the trillions. And when I look at Mugabe, what I fundamentally see is someone who you would never compare to Hitler. Just because Hitler was so much more vastly effective. When you look at, again, I can't overhit the totalitarianism. In Nazi Germany, the state was literally everything. And in Mugabe, it was a bunch of thugs with AK-47s who barely held on to power and just predated from the population. And so a lot of these things that I'm hearing are Hitler-like, I'll compare either to some third world dictator or to the Democratic Party today. How many of the things you described have been things the Democrats have been doing, where interfering in the media, the Democrats are legitimate, or the left is legitimately totalitarian today, which is something that the difference between totalitarianism and authoritarianism is that authoritarianism is you're in charge and you give out orders to people, but you don't really care. Totalitarianism is you control every single element of someone's life, between school, between romantic relationships, between work, between how the streets are maintained. And authoritarianism is super common over history. Totalitarianism is pretty rare over history, where wokeness is legitimately totalitarian in a way that Nazism is, that Trump clearly is not. And I see this incredibly strong totalitarian desire on the left, which is the biggest disconnect I see between Trump and between Hitler, where the left does want to dominate every single element of someone's life, like what I just said. And when I look at Trump, there is no cohesive cultural force that is MAGA. MAGA is not it's not a ideology. MAGA is like a bunch of strung together America themes, but there's no MAGA ideology. There is no MAGA thought. There is no MAGA. When you look at the left, leftism is a religion that consumes every single aspect of your life, and there's no parallel to that for MAGA. There aren't MAGA colleges in the same way there's progressive religious colleges.
To kind of piggyback off that idea, I also think that people run the risk of attributing things to Hitler that are true of a lot of dictators, right? Where like the idea of having a common enemy, that's not like something Hitler invented. He thought it was a really good idea, and he spends a lot of time talking about that. But like, you can go to any point in history and find a leader who's like, okay, let me rally the people behind this. I mean, the Pope did that in the Crusades, right? This isn't like a uniquely Hitlerian trait. So I don't think it's fair to attribute that specifically as, well, Trump is like Hitler because he finds a common enemy. Like, yeah, anybody who's trying to motivate a group of people will find a common enemy. That's a really easy psychological tactic to try to use for a group, right? I wouldn't, people see that and they're like, oh, well, it's Hitler. And it's like, it's not really Hitler. People did that way before Hitler was on the scene, right? And again, right, I'm totally in agreement about the totalitarianism, right? The left, if you look at the Democratic Party and the Fascist Party in Italy, they have a lot of the same ideas in terms of supplanting corporate interests to government interests and pretending to care about the workers, but really just sort of fitting them into this scheme on our behalf and going through and breaking through every single institution in society to make sure it conforms with our worldview because our worldview is morally correct. Right? Trump's not doing that, and he's not promoting a worldview that looks like that. Sure, certainly he's authoritarian in some sense, right? But he's not totalitarian. He doesn't cross that threshold.
Okay, and so when you guys say that he is authoritarian, you're saying this is a strong man who uses very aggressive language. He wants to be the best. He wants to win against the rest of the world. He's going to tell China, don't tread on me. He's going to tell North Korea, we'll fucking bomb you into the Stone Age, or what. He didn't say that, but he said some crazy shit. So is that what you mean when you say authoritarian?
Yeah, he'll tell you, right? He's a fighter. He likes to throw his weight around, and he likes attention, right? So he does this inflammatory rhetoric on purpose to draw attention to him. Certainly, I think that he's also authoritarian in that he likes to exert authority, right? He likes to get things done, right? He's a doer. And I'm sure that, he likes the idea of being dictator on a day. He doesn't, I don't think if you said, hey, let's make you king of America, he'd be like, oh, that's a great idea, right? I think he'd kind of be like, what are you talking about? But I'm sure he has days in office, and I'm sure every president has days in office where they're trying to push some policy through and they're like, man, I wish I didn't have to negotiate with Congress, right? Like I think that's a pretty clear frustration that anybody in power has, right? If I have an agenda that I think is going to help people, well, of course I don't want to have to go through all these legal processes to make it happen. I just want to make it happen, right? And I'm sure that he definitely has a temperament that feeds into that, but he doesn't have this plan or desire to break down society to, fit his image, right? It might be a fleeting desire that hits, but it's not a plan, and it's not something he's actively working towards in office.
All right, that feels like a very succinct summation of certainly Marek's take on this. Rudyard, does that idea sum up exactly where you're coming from as well, or do you think there's something more? Because what I hear from Marek is he basically checks, let's call it 8 of the 10 boxes, but the 9th and 10th box are the only boxes that really matter.
For Marek's argument, you'd get 2 out of 10, not 8.
Well, we'll see. I'm going to go through them here, and I think I can get Marek to sign off on most of these, that Trump is these, but maybe to a lesser degree, but the ones that really matter. In fact, let me just go through them. So here, Marek, this is what I heard you say. So sure. Going back to our list, we've got to be Hitler-like is to be loud, obnoxious, racist, to have a centralizing impulse, to be expansionist, and then I added, and I think you guys agree with these, to use force and manipulate the media, and using the democratic system against itself. So you said that he is loud, obnoxious. I think you'll even say racist. Obviously, Rudyard, you want to temper that and say, yeah, but it's by international standards, it's not super racist. Nobody is going to sound the alarm too hard, or they certainly shouldn't. You do not think that he wants to centralize government, that he does not have that impulse. That he is not expansionist. But in terms of using the media, I think we'll all agree that he certainly does that. He has said he wants to be dictator for a day. But at the same time, Marek, you said that you would be surprised if he didn't at times want to be dictator. And the only thing that's going to break that down is he doesn't have this overarching narrative that says this is exactly the world that I want to create. And because he lacks that, he's never going to actually go down the path of being a dictator. And while that may not be exactly 8 out of 10, that's got to be 6 or 7. Am I misunderstanding your take?
What you said is just the argument equivalent of saying you've been raped for being kissed.
Oh man, can I not wait to hear how people respond to this? Rudyard, are you saying that Trump is kissing us unsolicited? It's not rape, but he is kissing us unsolicited. Is that a reasonable way to characterize your view of him without connecting to Hitler?
You make him sound hot. I mean, you make him sound like a romance character. I don't know what that statement means. And it also, like...
What do you mean? You're the one that said it. You said, so when I said that there were 7 or 8 things...
I will cut you off here. I understand you. Okay, so the point I was trying to convey is that getting kissed on the cheek isn't that bad. It happens in loads of countries around the world. You're not going to die. If it happens to you once or twice in your life, you'll be fine. And what I'd say furthermore is let's compare the people who say this to the thing it is being said to. Because one of the points I'd like to convey is that we are assessing the global condition through a 1% of the global population who are deranged schizophrenic Karens who are completely removed from the other 99%, where you look over human history and there's a certain expectation about things you're allowed to say. There's a certain expectation about social values. There's a certain expectation about just how the world works. And one of those expectations is that you prioritize your nation and the dominant ethnic group of your nation just out of practicality's sake. You have to take care of the majority population. The deranged Karens say that being against immigration is racist, and even suggesting stuff about like certain nations obviously being at a higher level of development than others is also racist. That's not a moral code the rest of us agreed to. Saying that because most of the time when people complain about Trump, they complain about his rhetoric. No one else in history would care. You are just schizophrenic and deranged. And the things they say about Hitler are things, if you took 99% of leaders in history, and we are so obsessed with studying people in recent Western history who are so domesticated. Like our entire media frame in the Western world is so ridiculously domesticated, and it's removing from the harshness and just the savagery most people experience in life, where if you're a peasant, you're not going to care about this sort of thing. It's such a differentiation in scale And I didn't agree to those as the Hitler terms either, where it's such a differentiation of scale that it's ridiculous. I beg you to go south of the border into Latin America. Every single Latin American politician, even the most ethical and the most democratic, will fit into the things you just said. And none of them are Hitler. There's never been a Latin American Hitler. So you get to have like I'd like to stress the authoritarian totalitarian distinction because it's a very important distinction where 95% of leaders in human history are authoritarian. Where you could say FDR is authoritarian, you could say.
Can you one more time define authoritarian? I got
So
totalitarian.
Authoritarian is that you exert power over others directly. So an example of this is that in medieval Europe, people would have feudal lords, and the feudal lord was basically your landlord who you would pay tax rent to. Your landlord wasn't involved in your life in almost any way except for taking some tithes. He was completely not involved in your family life, your church life, that stuff. So having a government is in some ways always somewhat authoritarian, and having a government that's not democratic is always definitionally authoritarian. So you have states in human history that are authoritarian, but are generally nice places to live. Like I've been in Egypt or Thailand or loads of countries where in some ways they're freer than America, some ways, but at the same time, it's a military dictatorship. And totalitarian societies are very historically rare. It's the Nazis, the Soviets, and like a handful of ancient Chinese places. And so it's very rare to get an actually totalitarian society, and the effect on daily life in a totalitarian society is vastly different from anything else. Because totalitarian societies are the only societies in history where the government destroys every social institution of the society and then supplants it into the ruling ideology. The irony, though, is the modern left is actually authoritarian. They are actually totalitarian. You look at the modern woke world, and it's funnily enough that Britain is a totalitarian democratic society. It's a democracy, but the totalitarian ruling government does not allow any institutions that go against its agenda. And you need a lot to make the jump to a totalitarian society, because authoritarian societies also very rarely commit large genocides because they just don't have the political will to do so. And most totalitarian societies do commit genocides. And so unless you're dealing with a totalitarian society, you're just not going to get Hitler-like traits. And Hitler manifests literally zero of the traits of a totalitarian leader.
Okay, the obvious question that begs is, over the last, and still currently while we're recording this, we have I would say, aggressively left-leaning government, but there are no genocides in sight.
So I said most totalitarian governments have genocides. I didn't say they definitionally go together. You can have a totalitarian society without a genocide.
Do you think that we're at risk? Just to calibrate my sense of how concerned you are about the left in America.
We're not going to have a genocide. I don't think any side's going to do a genocide in America, because I just don't see why they would. So you can remove the genocide comment. I don't see that as a thing. But secondarily, what I would say here is let's remove Hitler from the table. Let's compare Trump to some boring Latin American dictator. I think that would be, of course, I do not support said comparison. I think that would be a fairer comparison. And every single trait you just said, Trump could be tried at the dictator of Argentina or Colombia or whatever. And my question from that is, okay, most humans have lived in crappy dictatorships over history. There's no genocide. There's no control of the press, or there is control of the press, but you can do a lot in most dictatorships over history. The government doesn't really interfere in the regime. There are definitely dictatorships. And of course, I love democracy and love freedom and all these things, of course. There are dictatorships that have more personal freedoms than totalitarian democratic societies today. I would much rather live in Vietnam today than live in Britain. I would rather live in Turkey than live in Germany.
Why is that?
Oh, because so there's a solid enough chance Britain or Germany literally send me to jail for my views, and Turkey and Thailand would never do that. It's also the cost of living is prohibitively high in those countries, and I'd live a much better life. But the thing about a lot of because I've lived in 6 countries, and the thing about a lot of second and third world countries is that you, in your personal life, you actually have significantly more freedom than a first world country. You can drink in public. You can say ethnic slurs. No one will ever give you crap for a word you say. The cops are a lot less difficult on you. Your HOA will never give you crap for anything. On your daily functional life, you often have significantly more freedom outside the first world than inside it.
Now, what is it about the structure of those societies? Because obviously those are all anecdotal. So what is the structural nature of those societies that leads to more freedom?
Oh, it's the structured nature of our society. It's that we're controlled by deranged Karens, where just the deranged Karen ruling class has destroyed any degree of social flexibility in the West. In Mexico, they have a wonderful street life. You could never have that here because Karens would call the cops. And the deranged Karenism has destroyed most of the West, where I'm a Canadian citizen and Canada has gone completely crazy. Same thing with a lot of Western Europe. According to some stats, Britain sends more people to prison for political crimes every year than Russia does. I don't trust those stats, but at the same time, the fact that they could exist at all is insane.
Right.
Yeah, I will give you that.
And I want to kind of piggyback off a point Rudyard made as well about like, okay, so Trump's a more apt comparison to say a Latin American dictator, right? But let's also, right, let's say you have 10 things on your list there. Sure, maybe 6 or 7 of them line up between Trump and Hitler, right? But let's even take somebody that we know, right? Let's take Alexander the Great. How much of that also lines up for Alexander the Great? How much of that would also line up for like Winston Churchill, right? The rhetoric Winston Churchill uses is significantly more racist than anything Trump has ever said, right? But nobody sees him as a threat to democracy because the time passed and he didn't threaten democracy. But certainly there was a lot of people in England who had concerns about Winston Churchill and his egotistical nature and him being in charge of Britain, right? And of course, he got them through World War II, so he's a hero now. But at the time, there was a lot of grumblings about, do we really want this guy, the guy who failed in Gallipoli, to come over here and lead the country, right? So sure, yeah, maybe 6 or 7 line up between Hitler and Trump, but I think you can also line up 6 or 7 or 7 or 8 between Trump and Alexander the Great, or Trump and Caesar, or Trump and Churchill, right? So the idea that these certain traits are Hitlerian is kind of ridiculous when you look at other people, right? And say, well, a lot of these also, right? Am I going to call Winston Churchill Hitlerian because he thought that Indians were less civilized than the English? Well, no, right? Like that seems a little ridiculous, right? I wouldn't call Alexander the Great Hitlerian because he saw the Iranians as, which he conquered as, less civilized than the Macedonians, right? And again, Trump's rhetoric compared to these people is not even in the same league, right? Like he's way less racist than these people. And so, yeah, sure. Again, maybe 6 or 7 of them check out, but I think you can check off 6 or 7 boxes for a good chunk of world leaders at any point.
All right, there's a couple things I want to touch on here. This is getting so fascinating. It is going to be very interesting to see people's response to this. Okay, so there is a massive movement to dethrone Hitler in the historical context, to say he really was evil, he was sinister, and the fact that all of these things apply to him is exactly why he's trash and we should not venerate him. Okay, I certainly am not in that camp. I'm blown away by what Churchill was able to do during World War II. Character flaws and all, obvious character flaws. Taking someone like Alexander the Great, I think there's a very easy case to be made that he was a complete and utter sociopath that was just hell-bent on conquering and destroying. And so I would not use him as my justification for Trump.
Let's compare the Biden administration to these Hitlerian traits to Trump, because Trump has the rhetoric, and the Democrats are always very passive on their rhetoric. They're always very guarded with their words. But then you'll hear leftist journos say completely racist stuff. Oh yeah, Biden has said stuff that's basically racist. The left has done vastly more to control the media and to manipulate that with really easy examples being the collusion with Facebook or Twitter with the FBI. And what I see with the Hitler appointing is the left, in its attempt to be a mirror image of the Nazis, and then the left in their attempt to completely reject the Nazis, in many ways to give them a mirror image of them, in ways where they are closer to each other than most societies in human history. The left and the Nazis are both incredibly totalitarian. They both support control of the media. They both support the establishment of a racial caste system. They support collusion between the state and the private enterprise, creating caps on prices and probably wages in the future. They a public sector focused economic system, redistributing income based off race. You could go through all of these. And the great irony is that in their attempt to be the opposite of the Nazis, the left became their mirror image because they only stared at the Nazis when they built their moral code.
That makes a lot of sense. So the way that you just broke that down, Rudyard, I will assume is you had earlier said, I don't necessarily agree with what I had outlined as being the Hitler-like characteristics. So I assume what you just went through comparing the left to Nazism are the traits that you're saying would count. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So certainly as it manifested as policy, which is, I would say, the side of things that you just went through, and those are extremely meaningful things to get into. My take on this, and we'll see if we can tie this up with a bow here, is that I think, Marek, you are correct that there are elements of Trump that do line up with what we'll call Hitler-like tendencies in the more grounded, being, let's see the exact words here again, being loud, obnoxious, the racist side. I don't know. That one I'm less convinced by, as evidenced by the reaction from Hispanics, finally a swing in black male voters. So I'm less inclined.
That's my point, right? That's mine and Rudyard's point, right? It's like we're not really sold on the whole racist thing because, yeah, sure, in the context of our current society and the way leftists frame race, he's a racist. But if you compare him to all societies across the world at any given point, he scores significantly less racist than any of these people, right? I think Trump, if anything, has a sort of. Go ahead. Yeah.
This to me is like morals. Morals have to be grounded on something. So to me, being racist needs a grounding. And I would say if you believe that one's worth is tied to their race, you are racist. So Trump either is or is not racist in my book. I suppose you could be more hatefully racist. You could be more aggressively racist. But anyway, I'm not a Trump scholar, but I certainly have not seen, like, my alarm bells do not go off around Trump based on his take on race.
Agreed.
My alarm bells on Trump go off with they're poisoning the blood of the country, pitting people against immigrants. Like, there are things that he does that I think are worthy of concern. And to me, the only question is this a slippery slope, or is this just somebody that I disagree with their stance or their approach on certain things? So I think getting excited when people chant lock her up regarding Hillary, bad move. Not pursuing her when you're in office, good move. If he is with his cabinet nominations, if he is trying to put a cabinet of people that will go in after his political enemies, bad fucking move, and I will be really bothered by that. If, on the other hand, he is simply trying to make things transparent, streamline government, reduce the amount that we are spending foolishly, and my cost for that is I have somebody who is very uncareful with his speech, who thinks out loud sort of through these ridiculous ideas. To me, the perfect example of what he's doing is when he talked about, like, could we inject bleach into people? I watched that live. And live, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is insane. I was like, this is like a writer would run through ideas for a story where you're like, hey, look, no bad ideas. Like, let's just throw this out and see like what it triggers, and maybe it takes you in a better path. And writers will say all the time, bad idea, dirty pitch, whatever, just so that they can throw the idea out. So I'm watching it going, yeah, like I do that in business all the time. Like, no BS, what would it take? You throw out crazy ideas, you sort of, go through the wheat for the chaff. And that is, it comes with a price because it's easy to make him look crazy. And I think that he does bluff, and I think that he is aggressive, and I think that he does bully, and I think all of those things are a mixed bag. And it's the same way I feel whenever I read about Churchill. This is a mixed fucking bag. Like, this guy, Churchill almost certainly really was racist. So that is like a whole thing. But as the only guy that would actually stand up against Hitler, you have to say, God damn, those are testicles of steel. Like, this kid literally said, this is Churchill, said, I want to be known for my physical courage. I want that to define my character. And when he fucked up in Gallipoli, he says, put me on the front lines of World War I. On the front lines, in the fucking trenches, man. And so, is he a wildly flawed character? Yes. But would he make the other soldiers nervous because he was so unafraid of being killed? Yes. And is that the kind of person that says, I fucked up, put me on the front lines, and whatever happens, happens, and I'm going to lead with courage? And then that person says, and I think I know how to run the government, and then that person is the only one that stands up. It's like, yeah, all of these people are mixed bags, man. So now I'm just trying to get to, dear people on the left who I love and want to meet you in the middle, I just want to understand, should you actually be concerned that Trump, he is flawed, but should you be concerned that he is on a slippery slope to actually being a scorpion and stinging people and doing the kinds of things that Hitler actually did? And that's where I'm like, even after this discussion, come back to the 3, 4, 5, whatever the number of things is that he does not line up with. Those ones matter a lot. And so I think, Rudyard, one of the most important things that you've said today is that the difference between authoritarian, so I'll just say Trump's a bully, okay? And as he has said, I'm your bully, but he's a bully. And that's going to rub some people the wrong way. He doesn't have a totalitarian impulse that I have seen. So when I look at that, when I look at him, when I look at all the things that people say he has said and go watch them for myself, I walk away with somebody who, he's going to play the bully. He's going to tell you to back the fuck off, or he's going to bomb you into the previous century. But then he governs as a moderate. Now, I look at everybody with a suspicious eye. So I will judge him by his actions when he comes into the White House again. But I don't think he has a desire for total control over people's lives. I think he wants to fix the economy. I think he wants to see people thrive and make money. Yeah, so in the final analysis for me, yeah, there are things that you can say this man does that rhyme with Hitler. But on the important ones, not so much. And man, if people have actually read about Hitler, like for real, dude, it's insane. And you don't see, from my perspective, any of that in Trump.
There's 2 points I want. There's 2 points I want to interject here. The first is, why do Anglos treat being a buzzkill as a moral virtue? Where the more you look at like Latin American politics, the more you realize Trump's rhetoric is so tame. Look at the stuff Silvio Berlusconi says. Look at the stuff they say in like Brazilian politics or Mexican politics. It's hilarious. Or in French politics, the constant mistresses and the constant sex scandals. Anglos get so worked up about like dialogue and stuff, and then in Latin America or the Middle East, they'll say the Sunnis are demons publicly on TV. So I just throw dialogue out because I know how ridiculous the rest of the world gets. And then secondly, there's a really, really huge difference between right now and 1920s Germany. And That's something that going into this I wanted to really bring up because I think it's one of the most important variables. That being that Germany's deep state was conservative and they were looking for someone like Hitler to take power. So in our current society, the elite is all leftists. You see it between the media, academia, a lot of major corporations, parts of the military, the Catholic Church. Every single institution is dominated by the left and often politically very radical ones. Well, in Germany, due to their unified empire that they got through a series of bloody wars, their leadership were all very conservative, not even moderate conservatives. These are hardcore nationalists or the old nobility. And the reason Hitler got into power and was able to become a totalitarian leader is that he was the shared coalition leader for the industrialists, parts of the trade unionists, the imperial bureaucracy, and the military. So all of those were socially conservative, and Trump was a nationalist leader who they could pick, who they would agree, we want this nationalist in charge. Hitler got off really lightly due to for his attempted coup because the judiciary were all hardcore right-wing nationalists who gave him 3 months for launching a coup, which is ridiculous. Today, our entire deep state, and the deep state's a contentious word, our entire ruling class are leftists. So Trump would be physically incapable of doing what Hitler did because there's just not the institutional backing for it at all.
Yeah, that's definitely the, hey, he might be Hitler, but he's never going to be able to pull it off argument, which I think is reasonable. So regardless of whether he is, he's not going to be able to do it because of the American system. But one thing, I'm just trying to channel the comments right now. Let's see if we can preempt some of this. So one thing we haven't talked about is his obsession with loyalty. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, I'm obsessed with loyalty. It's a very normal trait. Like, I reward loyalty tremendously. I mean, if we say like being bellicose and obsessed with loyalty are like Hitler-like traits, then like the entire nation of Italy is Hitler.
Right. And the thing is if you look at any leader ever at all, of course they put a premium on loyalty. They might not announce it all the time, but yeah, when you're in positions of power and you're in politics, it's a very backstabbing game. You want people around you that you can trust to some degree, right? And only in a world where they're like, well, the only people you should trust is experts, that's the only society where they're like, well, he shouldn't want loyalists around him. Why? Because I disagree with those loyalists and I don't think they're experts on fields. And the experts are really just people who fall within my ideological line, right? What I look for, and my real final point for all this, is I look for logical consistency. Are you mad that Trump is a philanderer? Well, then you should also be mad that Bill Clinton is a philanderer. Are you mad that Trump is trying to, bust through his, plans for the economy and stuff? Well, you should be equally mad that FDR did that, right? So whenever the leftists are mad about something Trump is doing, right, and it tends to come down to rhetoric, and I'm like, look, man, if rhetoric's your big problem, I don't know what to tell you. I feel like there's worse things going on right now. When you have a problem with Trump, if that problem exists on your side, on the left, with one of the characters there, and you're unwilling to condemn them for that just because they're on your side, you are not making a logically consistent argument. You're just mad because someone who's not on your side is potentially in power, right? That's what I dislike from a lot of the rhetoric around this, is it just sounds like people are like, well, he's not on my team, so therefore he is bad, right? I'm with you, Tom, where it's like, yeah, if he was trying to be dictatorial and overthrow American democracy, I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't be a huge fan of that. I wouldn't be a huge fan if anybody did that, because it's against American values to do that in the first place, right? That is the problem, not who's doing it. And I think some people on the left aren't introspective enough to consider that point when they make these accusations.
Okay, what do you guys think about Lincoln? So when you were saying that I like loyalty, I reward loyalty, made me think of Lincoln and the idea of a team of rivals. Now, maybe those team of rivals existed at a different time, and there was just a sense of shared fraternity for the government that maybe doesn't exist now. I don't know. But I've always resonated with that idea. I build my companies around that idea, that I want people who think differently than me. I want people that challenge me. Now, they need to share my values so that I know that we're trying to reach a shared outcome. But I do worry that Trump will blind himself intentionally, because what he means by loyalty is you echo back what I say.
Yeah, I think that's fundamentally true, but also doesn't make him Hitler. You are a CEO, I am a CEO. I understand how difficult leadership is. And so I often don't blame other leaders for doing different strategies than me, because I know leadership has to echo the leader and their personality and then the people they're working with. And then there's the situation they're in. If it's 1700s warfare and we got to charge muskets, blind loyalty is the best trait to have. And then there are other traits where you want different kinds of leadership. But I mean, I can accept a dozen different personality flaws in Trump, and then you still have to make the decision, is he a worthwhile leader against the competitors? And the conclusion I came to is yes.
Yeah, and on the point with Lincoln, I think that Lincoln in most of those instances is an exception to the rule, right? He
Right.
basically spent his entire career as a wartime president where the Democratic Party, which was in control of the South, broke away almost as a party. And so he was trying to make this, coalition with his rivals in order to show that that party should not break away from him, that they should put their trust in him and keep the nation together. That was an incredibly extraneous circumstance that I think there's a good lesson in there, and I like your style, Tom, with I want people to have different ideas but same values, right? And I think that's how Lincoln would have seen it too, right? Our value is we want to keep the nation together, right? Even though the Democrats have different ideas about how to do that. But certainly I'd say that he was in an extraneous circumstance and that was an exception to the rule.
Very fair. All right, gentlemen, how do you want to take us out? Do you think we've covered all of this, or do you have any final messages to people that are losing sleep over the fact that he is Hitler in the making?
So my problem is that that kind of person would lack enough rationality so that anything I could say up to this point would not affect them.
What about anything for the moderates in the crowd who they respond positively to a new angle on your
So
sense of what's true?
my attitude here is I'll state this. I do not believe Trump would like to take authoritarian power. I do not believe he is a dictator. However, making the jump from he is Maduro to he is Hitler is such an enormous jump that it just seems ridiculous. I mean, I would saying because he has some bellicose tendencies, Trump is one of the worst dictators in human history is just hysteria. It's just this pre-established emotional attachment that they're addicted to.
That's very concise. Marek, what about you?
Right. I think that, again, the left largely dominates the rhetoric in our country. And so, as such, when Trump isn't playing by their rules, they get really mad, right? Because his rhetoric doesn't match what we want to see. And so he's Hitler because one, he's not playing by our rules, and two, I think the elites feel threatened, right? He is threatening our interests and then trying to mobilize the working class poor people on their behalf to protect their interests. But I would say, I'm from Boston, I know a lot of leftists, and I would say if you look around, the left is not working in your interest right now either. And I'm not going to guarantee you that Trump will. I think he will. I think that's his plan, right? Whether or not he's able to execute in the way that he wants, that's his plan. He wants to help Americans out. But certainly the left is not making any moves to help you out right now. And in fact, they've intentionally taken steps to make things worse for you. So for the moderates, I would say, whatever your problems are with Trump, just make sure that you're also looking at whatever problems you have on the left and not falling prey to the media panic over this guy and being more clear on, what is actually going on in totality.
Well said. All right. I will leave you out there. I assume if you're watching this that, like me, you believe that the center is a destination and you hope to meet a whole bunch of lovely people there with intention. And I will just say this, the future is unknown. And anybody that tells you for sure they know what Trump is going to be, no one can know that. Now, we've had 4 years with him, so I hope that people keep their heads cool and remember the following, that the preemptive strike comes from somebody who believes that they can see the future. There is a movie about this very thing where people are convicted of crimes that they have not yet committed because supposedly they have these precogs that can see the future. It's called Minority Report. It is well worth seeing. My only ask of people is that tell the world what you believe is true and distrust yourself enough to know that you nor I cannot see the future, and a preemptive strike against somebody would be the only mistake to make. That's it for our annual extravaganza of info. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the comparison between Trump and Hitler. Make up your own minds. As always, thank you guys so much for being a part of this community. It has been a tremendous joy to switch from thinking of this as an audience to really engaging with you guys in the community. So please leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about this episode, any episode. We are in there. I am in there reading and responding, and I hope to see you in the comments. All right, until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care. Peace. If you like this conversation, check out this episode to learn more. If you think you've seen it all, think again. Did Elon and Vivek just use X to back down the government? Are billionaires blatantly rewriting the rules of politics, or are we, the people, simply making the government afraid of us again? Trump says the government knows about the drones, and XC...